You are listening to Seniors Junction podcast. We're preventing seniors isolation one conversation at a time. Your hosts today, Namrata Bagaria and myself, Paul Merkley. We're the co-founders of Seniors Junction. With us today, our special guest, Paula Banno. Paula is the Director of Lifestyle for a senior living community. Welcome, Paula.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank you. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure, I'd love to. I have worked with senior living communities for almost a decade. I'm the Director of Lifestyle. Before the pandemic, we had about over 1,000 activities every month on our campus, and we're looking to expand. Right now, we have about 425 residents, and we will be having about 160 more. The organization is one of the largest not-for-profits. So all in all, including team members, we have almost 10,000 people between residents and team members. So it's very exciting. And the senior living, I love that you are naming the problem of isolation and then coming up with a solution, because going through it on a day-to-day basis, it's extremely important. It's everything. Right?
Thank you. So given that you've worked in for a decade in this field, and I'm sure you've come across social isolation. So can you tell us a little bit more about what are the pain points with social isolation that you've experienced in your work?
Well, it happened before the pandemic, but of course the pandemic accelerated it. And I don't think it's going away, even once the pandemic, if hopefully it will be going away, because we're also transitioning into a different culture. Like people like myself, we're more independent anyway. So it's going to be even more important to prevent isolation. And I've seen it firsthand many times, and it can change somebody drastically, their personality and what they do. And we try to keep note, we try to notice if somebody's all of a sudden ordering all their food to be delivered to them, because we have fabulous dining room and whatnot. And so if they're not coming down to being social anymore, if they're not coming to activities, when we had everybody in isolation because of the pandemic, we would go down the halls and play music and, serve treats and try to do different things and dress up crazy and stuff like that, just to bring some life and let them know they weren't alone. But it goes much further than that. You have to have those conversations and build those relationships. And that's one of the things that I think is so important of what you guys are doing as an organization, because you had mentioned how it's important for them to connect to people. And that's the solution, right? It's all about relationships for all of us. We want to be valued, and we have to have relationships and purpose.
So if I heard correctly, the pain point of the present activities that happen in most of senior living is they're not meaningful or purposeful enough. They're good enough for maybe getting people started and cheering them up, but not so much that you can have in-depth engagement and that transformation that that one would have from doing, let's say, if you and I learned an instrument together.
I was just having this conversation with a wonderful woman, Heidi Bader, from our home office. And we were talking about how we have to make this shift. Instead of just having the most exciting and most wonderful activities, which we have great activities, we have great entertainment, we have that. We have to start thinking about now building those relationships. And there's only so many team members. So the key is, how do we build those relationships within the community with each other? Yeah. And it takes time, and it takes consistency, and it takes willingness to open up. I would say one of our challenges are that, I believe women, seniors, excuse me, they were brought up in a culture to be very modest and not say anything. Talking about themselves and stuff seemed to be very selfish. They kind of grew up in that culture. And then we have men who grew up in a culture where they're not supposed to say if they need trouble or they need help or like they need a friend, you know what I mean? So we have both of those as challenges. And so how do we get past that, and how can we bridge that gap? In our community, it takes sometimes just not one woman, but several women that will be willing to come out on a platform and speak and just talk about some of the struggles they had in their life and things like that, and opens it up so other people can feel comfortable, and men too coming out in the open. But it's hard for anybody, but I'd say even more so because you come from a culture that really did not encourage that. And I would say another challenge is the mental illness that we have. You know, it's because of the isolation. That's another reason why what you're doing is so important, because that helps to prevent mental illness. And we can see people declining, and we're not always equipped. And so I think we have to address those issues as well. And how can we help them?
I think I just want to add a few bits, Paul, before I give the question back to you. I think what you said something, and this comes from Paul's experience. He shared about having a group of retired older gentlemen who go for walks and activities together. And they started with one and how it built up for him. But I think what I realized was, like, my generation, I'm a millennial, and this is the total opposite, right? Everything is on display, right? Every little thing is talked about. It's like the very opposite, right? So how do you bridge that? And one of the reasons we thought was, and of course we did a lot of piloting, right? So we're coming from our experimentations. If we have to talk about something that's not us, let's say a movie which we all saw, at least it's a starting point to get people talking, or a piece of music. So we started off with like non-personal things, but eventually then it leads to a lot of more personal things. And by the end of 8 weeks of our classes, people talk like, you know, oh, I did this for my honeymoon, or I did this, that, and this and that. So for me, I have seen like these people who came on our pilot group, they knew each other for long enough, but they didn't know so many things about each other until they did that course together. And even, and this was a bunch of people who knew each other socially, because, you know, your first pilot is always friends and family, and not like, you know, not outside, right? But it was interesting to see that not just the number or the frequency, but also the depth in the conversation.
Yes.
Because suddenly your narrative, somebody is witnessing your life's history, your narrative. You're not worthless or useless or invisible anymore. You're very, very visible. And somebody is very, very interested in what you are doing, you know? So, yeah.
I think that's key, what you said about sharing personal, and the more that they're meeting and the more they feel more comfortable, then it goes back and forth. It creates that safe space. And that's what we all want, you know, and need.
We saw it change over the 8 weeks. We saw that develop, that feeling of safety and community develop over the 8 weeks. And also at the same time, they followed this interest that they had.
Mm-hmm. And also,
I love that.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, it sounds a little bit like that you have kind of sort of a Montessori approach, which is, I love. And I try to bring that with my activities too.
Yes.
Like you find out something that they're all interested in, and then you bring all these other elements to it. And so I love that. I think that's very powerful.
I was going to say one thing, and I'm going to say two things now. Okay. So I'll say, by the way, my first half of my career, I made preschools in India. So I actually worked in a Montessori. I actually had community. So that's how I was a big fan of circle approach.
Yes.
So, and then I did in the pandemic a lot of mental resilience circles. I did it on Meetup, not for seniors. But then when I saw people regularly were able to come out on the topic, then I said, oh, wow, we should do something on this, you know. But then coming to the second part, so the difference is our teachers, they're not just experts in their subject matter, like they're not just instructors, but we also train them, and some of them are all on their own, but we have a protocol where they're also facilitators. So they're not just giving you a lecture, they're pulling you in the conversation. And so it takes us time to scale, because in the beginning we have to train people, because some teachers are just fantastic teachers, but they're not, good in facilitating. Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
No, it's all good. I'm pleased you brought all of that up. So, you've already partly answered the question, but would you like to say more about your vision for dealing with the problem of social isolation?
I would, thank you. I think that it has to be relationship driven. And I think that's key. And both of you have touched on that. That is what's really going to make the difference. And so my question when I'm working with my team or whatever, we're like, how can we build these relationships? And we try to put a sentimental element into the activity somehow. And it could be something little, but it's something memorable, whether it's a card with a poem or whatever it might be. And of course, there's not enough time to do it all the time, and usually just the big events, but I'd love to be spending more time on that and having this dialogue between the residents. And oh my gosh, there's so much wisdom. Like every person has a story and everybody has something to teach us, right? And then you have these seniors who have all this wisdom. And I just feel like I want to pull it out of them, and I want them to be the facilitators and them to be the leaders, because when they do that, it's magical. I would encourage you to consider that with some of your groups, getting them to take turns in facilitating, because they really shine and have so much to give. And I want to create more platforms where they feel empowered. And again, it's that purpose too, right? So just why you get up, you have this deep purpose to help all these seniors from isolating, and that could be part of their purpose too, you know? So
part of our model or our idea is that some people would take a course and want to become instructor facilitators.
Yes.
Wonderful.
And we also have our model where, so we need, if we're going to do this in a senior home, we need internal champions, because we can be physically there. Your class is one thing, but getting till the class and after the class is another thing. Sometimes you might need help with, okay, how do I turn on my camera? Or encouragement. So we need champions. And for that, we need access to homes where we can have that level of collaborative relationship, because it's not us. I mean, we are just like a medium, right? And yes, we could be another technology company and make a platform and leave it. But we know that this audience needs a lot of hand holding. Like I trained as a medical doctor and I'm a researcher in this field. So this is a high touch point, and the USP of our business is customer intimacy. And even for our sales, like our sales are not like you send a link and people download. No. It's like the peer-to-peer selling happens, when somebody, so we need champions and advocates. Some of them, who are really good in social network, because there are some people who are more social than the others, the influencers. So we want them to, work with Seniors Junction as in sales with us, and we share revenues. And sometimes people just want to do it because it's a community thing for them, So for us, our hiring strategy is actually this: hire as many seniors as we can. Wherever we need, we train them. And if they need to be supplemented with a younger person who's more technologically savvy, then we do that. But if we can build their capacity and train them, because that's how you can, it's one vision, one dream, but it has to be a collective dream for us to actually make it happen, and so that's where we are, but we are very small right now, but that's the thought behind it.
I love it. I love that. And I think one of your pain points is the technology, and we have to figure that out. It's for all our seniors. I have all this great software and things, and we, like us, the more that we do it, the better we get with it. And so it's that repetitiveness and having somebody to hold their hand in the beginning. Both of you held my hand when we were setting this up and directed me around, because I'm not used to Zoom through an iPad. So,
No, I think a lot of when you do a business, I think one part is either we do tie-ups, and what we've noticed is where there are many companies teaching people Zoom and other functions, but it's very basic. But in order to take advantage of the Zoom the way we want you to, like say breakout rooms, because that's how you're going to discuss on an online call, right? And I don't want them to get worried, oh my God, I got lost in virtual space or something, or automatically something happened. So we do understand that a significant amount of our business will go in just capacity building, and initially when we are small, it's going to be us, and then we're going to have almost like I would say geek squad kind of a thing, which is available on ground, and preferably who can be within the vicinity of the places that we are working. So scaling is going to be a lot of work, a lot of money, but if we do it right for one community, then it's the case to get funded for many more communities.
I was just thinking, I don't know if this is helpful or not, but maybe partnering with a home healthcare agency and training them who are already going to the homes and they're already building that relationship and helping. I used to have a marketing company as well, and I love marketing along with everything else. And you guys have a really, it's important and it's valuable. So
that's a good tip. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, because we've been taught, we didn't see. Also, the thing is there's a difference between different countries and how they operate. Like in Canada, there's a different way people do business, and there's a different way they do business in the US, right? And of course, US has more, we have a publicly funded system. So the way people treat home healthcare is very different than the way it happens in the US. And so for us in the beginning, we never thought of this part about training them. It could be because if we can make those personal workers or whatever visitors like gig economy workers for Seniors Junction, because that's something additional, then definitely it would really work for everybody, because at the end of the day, everybody should benefit from whatever idea we have. And of course, and there's another movement, a lot of companies, not a lot, but a few successful companies in this space now are getting funded from Medicare Advantage, right? So it's reimbursable also. So I think as we grow and do the right things, and sometimes you may know consciously what the right thing is, but to reach there takes a while, for many reasons. Mainly it's, I would say, money, and then money, but the money is a cheap excuse. Sometimes it's also, the timing and the capacity and other things, right? And sometimes even as the customer, because you may be more ready than your customer, but if your customer first needs to trust you, and trust is not cheap, it takes time,
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Paul?
Good. So you've talked about your vision. Could you tell us, do you want to say anything more about what you see as the opportunities and pain points?
Yeah, the opportunities, we have to, there's so many more seniors than there are us. And so it's coming up with those things to nurture those programs, those activities that nurture those relationships. Like you were talking about how you saw such a difference after an 8-week time period. How wonderful if they still stay connected. And technology can be intimidating, especially to older people, but wow, it could be so empowering too. I've dreamed about having an online to where we have a community where, we have, I think it's over 5,000 residents total, and we could connect them all through their hobbies and things that they could talk to somebody at another community and build those relationships, build dating if they want, they can meet and they know somebody, they could go visit them at another community. I think there's so much opportunity, but like you said, which is a great point, sometimes we're ready before they are, and it does take time and they have to trust the system. But most of them, because of the pandemic, has been on a Zoom call or a FaceTime.
Definitely. And I think what's also you need to understand is there's some not very good players in the market. So there's a lot of spamming, phishing, and frauds that target seniors on telephone and online.
Oh,
And these
yes.
are not necessarily companies like ours or like who work in this field, but they do some kind of other fraud. But the ripple effect is that the trust in online or the trust in schemes or connections online, it reduces because of these particular bad players in the system. And and we've noticed that, like, for us, our payment systems, for example, many seniors are not comfortable with online payment methods because they will not, right? And it's fair, because if they probably may get targeted. So as a business, we also need offline payment methods too. So we have that in Canada. We're working on that. But then, so every time we incorporate one user experience to reduce one barrier, it's a significant cost to the business and time and effort. But we rather do it slowly and surely. And also, we've realized with senior dating, it's not that different from modern day dating, because the world has changed. So a lot of seniors, what we've noticed is many of them, at least, well, my generation is the breakup generation. They hardly get along, but many of them married their childhood sweethearts. So they had maybe one marriage or maybe one or two relationships before. Not all of them, I would say, but majority had that. So they had the first time so good, like 40 years straight off. Paul, yeah. And many of them are like that, like, first time, super good attempt to replicate that, because also it's the expectation. And then when they realize this whole back and forth of today's dating, even though it's a person is their age, it's senior, it's traumatic for them and it's traumatic to watch. Because suddenly when you then tell them, oh, this is something like this is something like that, they'll be like, when did all this happen? I'm like, well, that's a thing, just by the way.
Yeah, yes, but if we don't take them along and have that bridge, then they'll get further isolated, right?
Yeah.
So it's important, and we just have to have higher security and be that much more sensitive with that group.
Exactly.
Because they are a vulnerable group online.
And also we've noticed that the number of men and the women is like the numbers are different. So for every widower, the number of opportunities of mate selection or a partner selection or a companion selection is so many, because women live longer. So, and men don't live as long. So we've also noticed the choice pool a lot of men have versus the choice pool of women have. So of course, I mean, we try to get people together irrespective of whatever over things. But when we do get into the dating thing, I'm not thinking of it right now, but I think there's going to be a lot of because I know many people, they met their second spouses or third spouses in senior homes.
Me too.
Married,
yes.
Right?
Yes, the love of their lives they have met.
Exactly. So I guess maybe someday, and Paul, what do you think about moving in that direction?
Sounds pretty exciting to me.
Yeah.
Sure. I think other people have said, well, you really ought to think about that too, and we really ought to think about.
Yeah, you're not the first person telling us. And I can tell you that one of the differences we saw was we had one of our first or second batch. We had our pilot batches, the participants. One of them was a widower of a few years. And then after those classes, I wouldn't say all of the reason is our classes, but definitely those interactions livened him up. And he was very proactive about starting a relationship. And now I think he's met someone. But that shift that's needed, that happened, that, okay, I'm alive again. Okay, what am I doing, kind of a thing. So I'm happy for him.
and I did, if I may, I wanted to speak to what you said, that there's so many more women than there are men the older we get, because women do live longer. And also because women married older. And so you have that compounded with that they're not living as long. And it really makes a difference. You can see it in the senior communities. It's almost all women. That's why I tell my two daughters, marry young, marry young, marry young, if you're going to marry at all. but when I'm talking to speaking with the seniors too, for those who might be interested, or a lot of them aren't, they're looking for friendship. And of course, and whatever their sexual preferences, that can be more out there now too. And it's a safer environment. We have to make that for them. But we also work with people that have Alzheimer's and things. And it's interesting how some of that will come out because it's been suppressed their whole life. And it's there. So we just need to make it safer for everybody to be who they are, and a way to qualify people, because we certainly don't want to set up anything that would cause them some harm or somebody to take advantage of them, like you had said, that, because that's real.
Yeah, that's real. And there are lots of, I would say that anytime when we do any interventions, whether it's friendship or, we haven't started doing those workshops yet, but at least we have that content considered. Let's say, how do you make friends again, or how, working with trust, how much to trust and how much to doubt, like those kind of topics. It's not crossed our minds, because these are social skills. It's like a muscle, you have to keep practicing them and then contextualizing them. Because one of the biggest side effects of being isolated is you are very vulnerable to abuse, any kind of abuse. And so for us, coming up with recommendations, blogs, information, if you enjoy, there's a difference between enjoying doing an activity and sharing something. And, so those kind of things, of course, and at the end of the day, people are responsible for what they do. But I think for us, at least, it's encouraging to hear these ideas. And we've seen, we follow so many senior living, and my LinkedIn is full of just that, right? So I see and I observe, and I feel frequency decides that, Right now we are just programming it once a week, but eventually we hope to be more than that, because we need that kind of numbers. And once people are more frequent, we want you to continue your social circle in person or outside, so you live in, because some people are snowbirds, they're 6 months in here and then 6 months they're in Florida. So, so we still want them to do things with their friends in Florida or here in Canada, or whatever they want. And I think that's why, even though you say it's a tech, like say Zoom is the tech, but the context is so much of work that just tech is not going to solve it. If you're too short-sighted, yes, but if you are smart, you're going to enable their context with other tools and products and services, because they will need it.
Oh, true.
And also we are fairly aware of the different abilities and cognition skills and mobility issues that come up, or losses or sensory losses, or so many things. So for us to deliver services, or even for senior homes, where is the common denominator, and how can then we be more accessible for different forms of audience? But luckily Zoom, you have an audio dial-in, so we can at least have some kinds of people, but of course not all kinds of people. So and then that divide will get harder and harder as we get digitally onboarded, and then we'll have to have more accessible avenues so that everybody gets a chance. But this is the thought behind it anyways. So if in your opinion, in an ideal world, if we gave everything to everybody, where would they be okay, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it still. What are the challenges? Is it at a management level? Is it at activity director level? Is it at senior level?
So let me just make sure I understand the question. So you're asking that even if we do everything we can, and they're still rejecting us to do the activity, what is the reason for that? Or how can we get past that barrier?
Yeah.
That's the $1 million question, right? But I think one thing is, you don't stop asking, you don't stop inviting, and you invite different ways. You invite through a family member, you invite through somebody that they do have a connection with or something. And don't give up on them, because that's how we've reached our residents, that you keep asking. And when they say yes one day, the whole community lights up. We're like, oh, Paul came out today and he listened to the music and he was dancing. And sometimes it's a tipping point and it changes. And then all of a sudden they're out all the time. So I would say not to give up, be tenacious, and be creative, try different approaches. if you have somebody that you could put on the ground, as you were saying, to reach out and make sure that they're just warm and welcoming, and so that somebody doesn't feel stupid or intimidated. I know nobody intends to do that, but you know, sometimes just the way that they interact, I think that's super important, that they're just like, oh, let me show you this, and we'll just do it until you get it. You know what I mean? Like, you have to have somebody with, it's a special person that has a lot of patience and not to make them feel intimidated at all.
That's well said. Paul?
At the organizational level, if we were to offer our full slate of courses with our model and with other things that a retirement home chain asked for, where would you think would be the resistance? Would it be at the level of the administration? Would it be more at the level of the activity director, or would it be recreational workers? Where would you think would be we would encounter resistance when we think we give them the full formula for this, and they seem convinced by the formula, but still they say no?
I would say that your biggest barrier would be not it. If you told me that you had this program and you wanted to start it out, first I would suggest this, you know, say that you would try it out free for, you know, I don't know, one whole program or whatever.
Yeah.
And then we could get the feedback from the residents who joined. But the missing point for me would be, we're all so busy and we try to help our residents as best we can with technology. But if you brought that as part of the package, that to me is like, yeah, why wouldn't I try it? If you were going to ask me to try it for free, and then something that if I loved and I saw the benefits and it benefited them, then I would go to my other directors in my other communities all over the United States, you know, that we have monthly meetings and we do share different programs and things that we really enjoy and that we see that's beneficial. But I think that the biggest barrier is that technical component, because with things that we're doing now, we have an app and everything, you know, that it takes a lot of time, and that's the biggest barrier.
And it would add to it. That would be the fear, that it would add.
Yeah. I mean,
and we have technology classes every week that we do from an outside organization, and we have inside too, that they can come to us for different things. We can't do everything, but a lot of things we can. So it's time consuming, and you know, maybe it would be best for you to focus on one large organization like ourselves and really give it all, because the opportunity there is great, you know, or something. I don't know if it's easier in Canada or what have you, but that I would say it would be that, or if you get like the caregivers who are going to the house where they could help them with the technology, and that piece gets very easy for them. Somebody's setting it up for them, and you can guarantee that's your only barriers that I can see.
Thank you.
That's well put.
In your community, do you have internet in your common rooms?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I think one was internet, and I think at the time of when COVID was peak, permissions for outsiders to enter was non-existent, right? So when we made it, we said, okay, you know, we know many people can do it. And we were targeting the younger seniors, not the ones who are in homes, because we never thought they would, we just never thought of that in the beginning, because we wanted to pilot, and our age was like 65, 75, and most of them living in their own homes had their devices. But now that when we talk to institutional setups, we learned, and I don't know if that's right for you, only 5 to 15% of seniors in those homes have an email address. You know, I don't know if that's the right number. So
go ahead.
Yeah, no. So that was a revelation for us, you know.
But I think the way around that is, you know, possibly getting a smart TV or what have you, especially if they could talk and set it up, something like that. I mean, everybody could do that.
Yeah.
You know?
And that was the next thing then. And so then the next thing became is doing it in a common room with a TV because, well, I had. So then eventually we said, okay, fine. So we might not do the classes where it's more interactive. But then we realized one thing is a TV and there's another thing called a conference system. And there's a difference in the two. Because in a TV, you can watch me, but I cannot watch you. Or even if I put a webcam, unless it's the proper conferencing system, and if you're talking to me, because one thing as a company where, so this was like, we went like 6 months last year to this year, and there were a couple of big players we spoke to, we didn't get the deals. But the reasons were this, like many of the reasons, not just this, but one of those reasons. And the other issue is, let's say, like, it's the same thing as a classroom teaching online, right? So for us, if you are talking to me and you're, let's say, in this corner of the room, you can't see my hand. See, so even in my own hand in this camera, I can't see you. And then we realized very quickly that if we do this, let's say, a group learning experience, it has to be a proper video call enabled video conferencing room, not just your activity room where we put a TV, because, well, then we can do like, our recorded YouTube links and content and people listen to it, watch it.
Yeah, but
yeah, and there's a difference. So, and of course, the investment of that kind of a thing, we can't expect senior homes to set up those expensive ones immediately. Maybe eventually they might have like one dedicated space where these audiovisual activities can be done, because as younger seniors become older seniors, they will come with digital baggage and digital relationships which need to be enabled, and those accommodations will be met. But it's my hope. So what do you think would be the optimal amount of online for such situations? Is it online, recorded, or offline? Like, what do you think would be the answer?
But so say the question again, online versus offline in what regards?
Well, in a common room,
In a common room.
What would be the ideal thing? That everybody gets their own iPads and they do it in the common room together? Or we get people with 10 iPads. Let's say one gentleman comes with 10 iPads and gives it to them and then takes it back, and then we go to another home. Like we just get,
Yeah, I think what you just said, one person comes with 10 iPads and they're there to help set them up. And I think that would probably be the best. And that would start introducing them and making them more and more comfortable. So maybe eventually they would be able to do it on their own. They'll get their own iPad and things like that. But I think that would be really good.
Okay, yeah, because that's the magic formula usually lies about your customer, because we have two customers. One is senior home and one is this. Because with an iPad, if I get my own device, or even with a smartphone, you can always put a SIM card, right? So I don't even care if the internet is not good in the senior home, because who cares? And so these are good suggestions, because this is what because you're not there. Like if I see the place, I have worked all my career 10 years in digital, and I started with GPRS. Okay, so my first app was GPRS, and then of course 3G came in, and then 4G came in. Now we are in 5G, researching 6G. So I know how to do something old school. I have done it. I just need to know how much of old school do you need. And when we did things old school, majority of the money went in training and support services rather than the tech piece itself.
I would say, to just make it an easier going into the market, I would go for the ones who are living in independent first.
Yeah,
and get them and introduce them with the iPads and things like that. That would be good. And I think it would be pretty exciting for them too. And a lot of them have already used it. So they could come, those who have one, they could come. And if you could help set them up, that would help too. So not as expensive for you. How large can the classes be and still be productive?
Well, it depends on which class you take, right? Like so if it's Paul's lectures, I can go up to 100. And if it's more like a nuance, like if you're learning painting, where the teacher has to see your work and tell you feedback, then it's going to be like 20, because even if we do breakout rooms for those conversations. So we can have regular lectures, but we don't prefer that, because that doesn't technically break isolation. But if it's a starting point, if the goal is, okay, this is not the full Seniors Junction, but the first step that these guys did something online, live, just that one component. Yes, we can. We will only give you those teachers who have more lecture style classes where people just have to sit and attend. And if they have a question, just ask. What we've noticed is if it's a larger group, not everybody knows how to mute their mics and unmute their mics. So one of us will mute everybody and then we unmute and mute as they have questions. And so a sweet spot is 25 people, because even as a backend manager, because the support needed is so large, right? We don't want people to feel that, oh, I was shut down and my question was not asked, because then that will put them in further isolation. So because our jobs are very sensitive, it's not just about content, right? I mean, they can go to YouTube and watch any content. But the whole point is we pulling you in with someone who's legit in that topic, not like some kid who saw 20 YouTube videos. No, we're going to get you the right teachers who are experts in that field, but they're also facilitators. So, so this is the thing. So I would say not more than 25 in the beginning, because if all of them want to ask one question, because we want them to talk, you know, otherwise they will be isolated, and many of them will come listen and leave.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, the circles cannot be too big. When you do a Montessori approach or a circle approach, you know, then you're constrained by numbers. So you'll have to do, if you want to reach more, you'll have to do more repetitions, which is doable because we have backup for everything. So like I can do the only thing is Paul has to not get bored saying the same thing again, but he's a teacher who's passionate. I don't think he'll ever get bored of saying the same.
Not a problem. It's not a problem.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. So if people want to find you, where can they find you?
Probably the best way would be to just text me, and I'm willing to get my number out there. It's area code 630-946-7777. Easy number to remember. Text and tell me if there's any questions or anything I can help, and we can set up a time to chat. If they're interested in senior community, I'm with LifeSpace Communities. We have beautiful communities throughout the United States, and we're growing all the time. So
thank you.
Thank you very much, Paula.
Thank you. This was quite enjoyable, and keep doing what you're doing. It's important.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.